So I've been thinking about the past, and I think the worst thing that you can do to someone is nothing. Like, even if a person objectifies another person, then at least the person that's being objectified knows that they're serving the purpose of being that object, of being a decoration, of being wanted, at least superficially. But there's something worse than that, which is to not even attribute that value. Like, you have to kind of walk down to it. It's like the average everyday evil is just lack of consideration for your fellow person. Like if you see some homeless person or something like that, and then you just don't feel anything at all, other than maybe a slight amount of disgust because they're dirty and nasty and dying and all that. So then you've got, oh, you cut me off in traffic, so I'm going to scream at you and throw epithets in your face, etc. And then there's, I don't know, having some fight or something with someone about some stupid triviality. But the closer that you get to, like, not even thatness, you get all the way down to, like, where if you were to picture, like, a sociopath, most people think of someone that would torture someone or rape them or, systematically destroy their life or something like that, where they go to any lengths to undercut this person and, manipulate everyone around them and create false rumors and turn their own friends and family against them and stuff like that. And even then, the victim feels like they're valued in some way because at least they were worth going after to do that to. But then imagine if someone took you and put you in a room and then literally just forgot that you existed. And most people say, oh, well, that's nothing. It doesn't have anything to do with shit. That's easy. No, it isn't. If you get put into solitary confinement and there's no one else there, it's just you, and there's nothing to do, there's no reason to do it, and there's no one to talk to about anything. You can't even check in with them to see if it's raining outside. You can't even get validation about whether or not you're sane anymore. You could lose your fucking mind. I mean, not to the extent of like, oh, I forgot what day it is, or like something stupid like that most people would think about. No, it's way deeper. You forget your own name. You forget who you are. You start inventing people in your head, but you don't realize that you did that. You start talking to people that don't exist. You hear things that aren't spoken. There's things that will happen to you that you'll lose even your own mind. You'll lose your own identity. You'll lose things that are so deep and so intimate, intrinsic to you, that you don't even recognize that you could lose them unless you get confronted in that kind of a situation. And what it taught me is there's something valuable about existence, even if I'm being tortured, even if I'm being raped, even if I'm being, yelled at or screamed at least there's some interaction. At least the person has acknowledged that I exist. At least there's some traction and there's a story and it makes sense. It might not be a good one. It might not be fun, but at least it's there. At least it's something. But I feel like the worst thing that you could do to another person would be to lock them in a room with nothing in it and then forget that they even exist. And I think that that's because it reminds me of the way that God looks at the world is like, even if people are raping each other and treating each other like shit, at least they're doing something. At least there's something going on so that they can learn and get through it. And, okay, so there was all this horrible shit, but then we learned from it and we got better. Or we invented a new law, and so now we know better. Now we know how to prevent that or something. There's some movement, there's some change, there's some traction, there's something going on. And I think deep down we all feel this, is that at least if there's something going on, that it is eventually going to end up better than it was in the beginning. That things eventually do get better. And we see it everywhere in evolution, right? You've got primordial ooze that lived in the ocean, and then it turned into plankton, and then that turned into little sea urchins, and that turned into little fish and plants and stuff like that. And then the fish started coming out of the water and climbing on the land, and then there was dinosaurs, and then now there's people, there's humans, and things keep getting better and keep getting better and keep getting better. And then technologically, we used to have just bows and arrows and sticks and clubs and rocks, and now and then we've got we went from that to knives and swords and then guns and then nuclear warheads and hydrogen bombs and fucking all kinds of shit. We're probably going to come out with artificial black hole bombs. We'll have black hole bombs. Like, we need those. Those will be fun to play with. So, at least there's something going on that you can be scared about it. You can have, freakouts about it. Well, at least it gives you a reason to hug your family all the closer or appreciate every moment that isn't happening a little bit deeper, stuff like that. So there's always something you can do with it. But imagine if there was just nothing. Imagine if you were just like the last person on Earth. What would you do, and why would you even bother doing it? There's no one there. No one cares. There's no one that's ever going to see it. You could write Shakespearean novels, and there's no one there to read it. You could solve every physical problem, come out with every physical law, standardize the entire field of physics, unify quantum mechanics and classical physics and gravity, solve every problem that any person could ever hope to have solved, and all the accomplishments that you could think of having. And they don't matter because there's no one there to see it. No one gives a shit. You could plant an orchard and, you could do all these things. You could do whatever you want, but there's no one there to care. It doesn't matter. It's all equivalent to having not existed to begin with. And the longer that you sit with that, if you really sit with that, that's the worst thing that you could do to someone. I can't think of anything else that would be worse than that, because at least if you're getting raped, then there's something happening. There's something that's going on. There's some story where you know who you are. You might not like being who you are, but you know who you are. You have a story. You have an identity. You have something going on. A person that is just wandering around that has no one and nothing, that's living in a nuclear wasteland, Holocaust, there's no one there. There's no one there to even rape them. So it's just the slow, silent decay of death and pointlessness. And if you flip that, if you take the negation of that, then that must mean that existence itself is meaningful, that there is no event that could happen in existence that would not have some meaning, to God at least. So even if I'm out wandering around, well, at least God can see me, and God can see that I'm trying to do, what's right, even though there's no reason to do it. That I'm not going to, destroy everything and just break shit or kill myself or throw my life away because of the effect of there not being anyone there. At least if there's a God, then God can watch me go through that, and then I've got God. and it's something. And so, there's how they say there's always a silver lining. There's always another way of looking at it. You can turn blackness into whiteness. You can look at, oh yeah, that was so horrible, but then it's not happening now. And thank God, right? Thank God I can actually breathe and I have some life. And there's still something to look forward to. And I'm not dead yet, But if there was no God, and I was just wandering around by myself for years and years and years, because I'm thinking about when I was a kid, and I didn't have any friends or anything. I didn't have any brothers or sisters. I had no one around me. I used to go home and there was no one home. It would just be an empty home. I was a latchkey kid. And so I think about that, and I think about, like, why did that seem to affect me more than what so many other people have gone through that sounds like it would be way worse? And I still struggle with that. Why is neglect worse than abuse? And what does that say about the value of existence? Because abuse is an effect. It's a bad effect. But neglect isn't even that. It isn't even a bad effect. It's worse than having the worst effect, because there's no effect. There's nothing. There's nothing to say. There's no story. It doesn't go anywhere. It's totally pointless. At least if there was some bad effect, if there was something that's bad that's happening, you can say that's bad. And you can say, I am representing the good, and they are representing the evil, and that's the story, and there's a meaning in that story. But what is the meaning of nothing? What is the meaning of not even having a story? There's not even a good or a bad person anymore. It's just devolved into nothing. That tells me that even if we did the worst things that we could think of doing to each other, that is better than just sitting there and not doing anything. Because we get freaked out. I do. I get scared about, like, oh, well, I don't want to succeed. I don't want to necessarily be responsible, because what if I fail? What if there's a whole bunch of people that start depending on me and they expect that I get something done, and then I don't get it done? And now they're out, and they could have been okay if they had just trusted someone else. But because they trusted me, they get put into a fucked up position. Or I end up going to hell because I did something wrong. I did something in some fucked up way, and I did it for the wrong reason or something like that. But it's better than not having ever gotten up off my ass to do anything anyway. Because even if I have a bad effect on the world, it's better than nothing. It's better than just not doing anything. And I think that that's the same mentality that I would have to, superimpose on top of God. Like, that's kind of how I justify what God did when he created the world. It's better than nothing. It's better than not having existed to begin with. Yes, there's pain and suffering. A lot of it looks like it's pointless, but at least it tells a story. It represents goodness and evil. It gives you a direction to orient your life around, so that you can say, I don't want to cause that, because I've seen it. I've seen the shit, and I don't want it to continue. So that gives you a direction. It gives you a momentum. It gives you a drive, a push in the right direction. Despite all those bad effects, it might actually end up inspiring you to help someone else. It's kind of weird to think about, but if I didn't have all the shit that happened to me, and other people didn't have all the shit that happened to them, they might not have a reason to fight against it or have a cause that they want to fulfill and manifest. There might not be anything that motivates them in life, because there was never anything that happened. It just was the same old, and there was no story or good guy or bad guy. It was just some blasé, waste of time. And that, I think, would be far more terrifying than us having some bad suffering, yeah, but then to get over it and make something better. So I think that I think that there's something I think there's something priceless about existence itself, irregardless of the effect that it has, even if it's something torturous and full of suffering and at least seemingly pointless. At least it's better than nothing. It gives us something to do. It gives us a reason. It gives us a purpose. And so I think that that's why Jesus died for our sins. The bad effects are they're not even a problem in comparison to faithlessness, which is a far deeper issue. If you have faithlessness, you don't have a story, you have no identity, you have no drive or motivation or reason to do anything. You're equivalent to having not existed to begin with. The faithless person is like a ghost. They don't really exist, and they kind of feel that. Like, people often feel like that they're just sort of like some empty bag or some like bit of nothing, that there's not anything to them, that they could blow away in the wind, that they have that little of an impact, that it really doesn't matter, you know? That's the worst feeling. It's not that, oh, well, poor me, so much bad shit happened to me. That's actually a step up from the empty bag feeling. The empty bag feeling is the worst feeling you could ever get because it won't help you solve shit. You can't use it for anything. Like, at least if it was painful, at least if it was some kind of suffering, you could fight against it. You could use it to fuel you in some way. But an empty bag just blows around in the wind. You can't capture anything from it. There's no energy in it. It will starve you. And then you have nothing, and you don't have the energy to even go forward anymore, or even a reason to do so, if you did. So there's so many examples of that ultimately what really matters is not the effect, but the cause, the faith, the reason, the purpose, our relation with an ideal, if not God, at least an ideal that we serve, and try to make the world in that image, in the image of our ideals. And, you know, I think that intrinsic value is the freedom to choose, because that's where we have our being. That's where we have the root of our consciousness and the feet, I guess, of our purpose that helps us walk forward is choice, being able to choose. Because if I can't choose, then I don't have a cause. I'm just a slave. And that's kind of back to that nothing thing. It's like, well, if I'm just a slave, if I don't serve any purpose, if I'm just like some addict, just because I can get high and that's like the only reason that I'm even alive, is just so that I can just keep getting high and just keep getting high. And it's the good effect. And it doesn't mean anything because I don't serve a purpose. I don't have any cause. There's not a drive toward anything. Because the effect just dissipates. As soon as I get high, yeah, great, I'm high, but then it goes away. And then I have to do it again, and I have to do it again, and I have to do it again. Now, if I keep doing it, then it's like, it gives me the false illusion or the delusion that it feels good to just sit here and just, like exist. But in reality, it's coming from a drug, and I know that because I remember having done it. And so it kind of makes it pointless because it's like, well, this is just because there's a good effect, but it doesn't serve anything. There's no real reason for it. Over and over and over, though, I keep finding these truths, this same law, that it isn't about the effect, it's about the cause. It isn't about what happens, it's about why you chose to do it, Because you could have, I used to say, consider the failed assassin. If you look at like somebody who misses their shot, are they less guilty than someone who actually killed somebody because they were a good shot? I mean, is there really any difference in guilt between those two people, even though one of them actually killed someone and the other one didn't? I mean, I wouldn't think so. I wouldn't say that the failed assassin is any more morally acceptable than the successful assassin. I would think that they're morally equivalent, irregardless of the effect that they had. Their intent was where the issue was. That's where the problem was. And all that is to say is, it isn't about the effect. That's not why we exist. We don't exist because of effects. We don't exist to feel good. The reason I think that we exist is because there's the freedom to choose. And in that freedom, there's an infinitude of possibility, because I guess that means the potential. Existence has infinite potential. It could do so much. There's so many good things that we could do. But it isn't about the things that are being done. It's about the fact that we can do them, the fact that we have the possibility. And that possibility, I think, has to deal, again, with choice, because we also have the possibility not to. We have the possibility of just sitting here and not doing it. But if we don't do it, it won't get done. But if we do it, then it will get done. And so that's the point. It's not that it got done. It's that we chose to get it done. So again, we find that same thing. The intent is what matters, not the effect that we have. So that's why I think, for example, that a good person who did bad things is better than a person that didn't do anything. If you at least had an impact on the world, then that's going to affect other people. But I feel like if I don't do something that's going to affect a whole bunch of people, that my life is a waste, because I have so much potential. I see so much potential in the world also. And I feel like if I don't do something, it won't get done. It won't get fixed. It won't get better. And if I do it, then it will. And that's the whole impact, that huge. And you have to have both. It's, if I don't do it, it won't get done. If I do it, it will get done. And then there's that distance in between, and that's what gives it its meaning. And the meaning is the relativistic difference, or the relation between it not getting done and it getting done. But it's not the effect. I guess that's actually not it. It's not like that exactly. It's more like the distance between choosing to get something done and choosing not to. And the choice, I think, is really where that meaning is at. And so ultimately, I think that my paradigm says that the intrinsic value of existence is in the freedom to choose. Now, there's a lot of other ways of looking at it. You know, I've encountered a lot of different ways of looking at why existence could be intrinsically valuable. But once we make that choice to say that it is valuable, from that we can derive all sorts of oughts. But we have to make that original presumption. So you know how they say you can't draw an ought from an is. But if you make a presumption, if you make an assertion, if you axiomatically presume that there is intrinsic value to existence, from that you can derive an objective ethic if you wanted to. You could derive a deontologically valid ethic from that. But you have to make that presumptive leap of faith first. And that has to deal with your own subjective amount of faith. And that doesn't have a direct correlation with the effects that you've had in your environment. Which is good, because if bad things happen to you, that doesn't control you. That doesn't mean that you have to be a bad person because something bad happened to you. And that, again, is so powerful and so inspirational, to see someone having grown up in a shit-ass environment and then grow up and be an awesome inspiration for other people, despite that fact, is so much more powerful than somebody that grew up with a perfect fucking family home with Leave It to Beaver parents and Brady Bunch fucking relatives and all that stupid crap. that's not nearly as inspiring as somebody that came up from nothing, that was like beat up as a kid and then they ended up being like Martin Luther King or something like that, like that's way more inspiring than somebody that just started off with a good childhood to begin with and then just kept going with it. And you really don't see that too much. Most people that are super into that kind of thing, they aren't usually like the sons and daughters of rich people. They aren't usually like spoiled brat kind of people. They don't typically come from that background. Sometimes, like the Buddha, and I often think of that, it also doesn't necessitate that you're going to be an unenlightened buffoon just because you were raised well. There is actually a goodness in that too. You're not robbing anyone of their character by taking good care of them. So it's not in the effect. Even if you take good care of your kid and stuff, they can still end up being a driving force in existence. But I feel like the more you abuse a kid, the better off they end up being. And I know that sounds really fucked up, but if you look at like the nicest people on the planet are the ones that were treated the worst. The most considerate people on the planet are the ones that are never considered, that no one ever considers. It's kind of weird. It's ironic. And it bespeaks that. It's about the purpose. It's about the cause, not the effect. So it's just so interesting to me that I can integrate everything under that, and it ends up making a good story out of everything, even if there is all this suffering, and it helps me appreciate existence. But I'll never get over the nothing. That shit was so goddamn horrifying, so enraging. There's no one to kill. There's no demon to fight. There's no fight. There's just decay. It's weird. It's such a bizarre fucking thing. And I guess I'm reminded of that because of my recent encounter with Stacia, who carries the nothing with her in her soul. But yeah.